Unconscious bias training does not work. Okay, now that I've gotten your attention, let's start the video. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, otherwise known as DEI, has become one of the top priorities for many employers and companies, not only in Ireland, but worldwide. Like many other countries, Ireland has become more diverse due to globalization, and because of social and political movements, it has become more pressing for companies, employers to attract the top talent from different walks of lives and different countries and backgrounds. And one of the most common ways for attracting this talent is to be more inclusive. And some companies do this by engaging in unconscious bias training. Unconscious bias training is one of the most common DEI strategies in Ireland and in the UK. For instance, 81% of UK companies have run at least one of these trainings in their lifetime. But as a social psychologist, CEO, and mother of 32 houseplants, I have to say one thing about these trainings.
Don't do it.
Many companies have greatly been misled about the benefits of unconscious bias training. And I'm here to tell you that you and your company may be wasting your hard-earned money and time if you're not doing it correctly. Hi, my name is Mamobo Ogoro, social psychologist and founder of Gorm. And if you want to learn how to unify across differences, subscribe to our channel. So first things first, what is unconscious bias? Also known as implicit bias. Unconscious bias is a psychological theory that assumes that we all have learned stereotypes about certain groups, things, environments due to social conditioning. The idea is that our brains are like computers. And if we had to process every single bit of information that we come across every single day, our brains would literally explode. So we file them away into little groups or files or boxes, also known as stereotypes. And when we want to quickly retrieve that information, our brains take mental shortcuts to do so. Oftentimes these mental shortcuts are misguided, but we make short decisions based on our environment and our social surroundings that we engage with. These are known as biases. Biases are hidden in our subconscious, but bubble up to the surface and manifest in subtle ways in our everyday lives. On an individual basis, this could be, let's say, choosing someone because they look like you. And on an institutional basis, this can lead to policies, practices, action plans that have preferential treatment for certain communities and certain groups. Specifically, unconscious bias assumes that everyone possesses bias. People are most likely unaware of their bias. It is deeply ingrained. It influences attitudes. It probably influences your behavior too, and it can be measured. Unconscious bias was proposed by social psychologists Mahzarin Banaji and Anthony Greenwald through a test of examining how quickly we link certain concepts like race or gender to positive or negative feelings. To do this, the scientists created this test. Participants had to match faces, adjectives, and classify them as being part of a group, let's say good or bad. So if you want to measure how racist someone is according to this test, you are more racist based on how much time you spend and how many mistakes you make in categorizing Black people's faces with positive words. Unconscious bias training, as a result, wants to help you improve your score through a 1-hour workshop that aims to help recognizing one's stereotypes against others, stereotype replacement, replacing negative stereotypes with positive ones, and countering stereotypes, where we judge individuals based on their individuality rather than their group. Basically, these trainings are gamifying historical oppression and social causes. And unfortunately, addressing prejudice and discrimination is not Mario Kart. Unconscious bias training is a viral global sensation used by many global companies, but many giants have stopped using these trainings altogether because they saw that they were not really effective when it comes to being an inclusive company or environment. Many companies and psychologists have found that unconscious bias training has little to no effect when it comes to improving the DE&I initiatives. Yes, it can raise awareness of biases, but research shows awareness alone does not actually spark behavioral change. And while the intentions of many companies and the people who run them are pure, there's no consistent evidence that unconscious bias training helps reduce prejudice and discrimination in the workplace. In fact, in some cases, it makes prejudice even worse, where participants that are now aware of their biases and without the proper next steps to move into action They will avoid them altogether, avoid tackling their prejudices and even their biases that may even take place in their work environment. Some psychologists have found that unconscious bias trainings have even made participants have more negative stereotypes and more prominent biases in their environment. Unconscious bias training can also make some people less aware and less accountable of discrimination, since they now believe that all their biases are implicit and they cannot control them, let's say. And this can actually make biases, discrimination, and prejudice in the workplace even worse. And if you don't believe me, make sure to check out our description for all the research and evidence that backs up these claims. And don't worry, I can wait. One of the only positive things that unconscious bias training does is help us to bring awareness as to the prejudice and to the privilege in the workplace. But that's really it. Awareness is only one part of the equation. Being aware of your bias doesn't translate into making your team more diverse and addressing discrimination or prejudice in your workplace environment. Unconscious bias training sometimes can be like putting a plaster on a leak in your house. It can make you more aware that there's a problem and make you feel good in the short term, but did it really do something? And looking on a deeper level, it doesn't really solve the problem. Going back to our house analogy, it's in the foundations that we need to look at. And yes, unconscious bias training, like I said, is awareness, and we need that, but the next step towards it is action. And for many organizations, having mandatory trainings for staff in unconscious bias without actionable steps will only leave participants feeling more anxious with the newfound awareness that they have as it relates to their biases. So what is the solution to all of this? Diversity, equity, and inclusion is hard work. And unfortunately, it takes a long time. It's not done overnight. Research shows that in order to make the best of unconscious bias training, long-term actions, initiatives, and strategic focus are necessary for the true behavioral change in an organization. For individuals, evidence-based intercultural exercises can help and allow participants to go deeper into their internal work as regards to their biases, such as perspective taking, empathy building, and identity mapping can help individuals. And for organizations and institutions, deep interrogations as to your policies, strategies allow you to create and foster a less biased environment where policies, action plans are necessary for change. And to have individuals be more accountable, I like to say that bias is not unconscious. It's very explicit in individuals, leaders, systems, and structures that exist in our everyday interactions. And if you are committed to DEI, yes, it's important for your teams to be aware of their bias and their prejudice, but also actionable approaches to help you and your teams are so important when it comes to restructuring the foundations of any organizations and the behaviors in it. So it is a must to look for approaches that enable you to name the systems of oppression that promote inequality in any given environment through its policies and through its action plans. It's important to support your colleagues on their journey of inclusion by implementing trainings that go beyond awareness, yes, we need awareness, that go beyond awareness to actionable steps that they can take to break down their biases and prejudices and move towards inclusion. We need to seek strategies that allow employees and individuals from underrepresented communities to raise their concerns in a safe and open environment, making the organization, or let's say workplace, safe for everybody. And if you need help, find people who can support you on delivering effective evidence-based trainings that will support you and your colleagues and your teams to take the next step in breaking down the prejudices and taking actionable steps towards behavioral change. Bias, especially negative bias, is inevitable, but it can be tackled. And it's a choice that you have to make and to decide if you want to design a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive organization. And if that's you, let's get to work.